Hey guys, welcome to Telling the Told and Untold. My name is Tshego. Before we go straight into today's video, I do have to give you guys a content warning. In this video, we do talk about ace assault. So if that's something you think you're not interested in watching, then this video probably isn't for you. So maybe you can watch some of my other videos or just wait for my next upload. Uyinene Mrwetyana was born on the 30th of April 2000 in East London, Eastern Cape. She's the second born and has an older brother. His name is Esona. From as young as her mother could remember, Uyinene was a very inquisitive child. When she was 4 years old, she randomly went up to her parents and told them that she was just tired of sitting home all alone, not doing anything, and she wanted to start going to school. And immediately after that, her parents enrolled her in preschool. Uyinene was also mischievous, as most kids are. In hostel, her and some friends would sneak out and they would go to their favorite sandwich shop. You know, she was a very bubbly and happy person, and she could literally relate to anyone. Amongst her friends, she was the one who would bring everyone together. She was always authentically herself, even around people that she didn't know. She was always there for everyone, and she had such a good heart and just this energy that would draw so many people towards her. She was also very generous and had so much gratitude. In 2019, Uyinene got accepted to study at the University of Cape Town, and she was majoring in media and film. She wanted to use it as a foundation and stepping stone to tell the stories about the injustices of the world and just basically what she stood for. She stood against various societal injustices, in particular patriarchy, and growing up, her uncle remembers that every time she was in the house, she would see her dad like sitting on the couch and her mom in the kitchen and basically just running the household, and she would just always make a joke about how she didn't like that, you know. In June 2019, Uyinene went home for the winter holidays and she returned to Cape Town at the end of July, and this would be the last time her parents would see her in person, but they would always speak on the phone almost every day. On the 24th of August 2019, Uyinene and her mom spoke on the phone. This was around 12 p.m. and they were basically just speaking about how her mother was coming down. Her birthday had been 4 days earlier, and Uyinene was very excited to have a mom in Cape Town, she wanted to show her mom around, take her mom wine tasting, and just spoil her. So that was the last conversation that they had. Saturday night, her father tried calling her, but her phone was off, and he didn't think much of it, just thought maybe that she was busy or something like that. And then the next morning on Sunday, he tried calling her again, and still her phone was off and he couldn't get through to her. And he waited a couple of hours until like the early afternoon, late afternoon, and then he tried calling her for a third time, and still her phone was still off. And this is when her parents started thinking that maybe something was wrong, because why was her phone off? Like, it had been off for almost 24 hours at this point. So they decided to call their son Esona, because he also lived in Cape Town and he didn't live too far away from the residence that Uyinene stayed in. So they called him and they asked him to please go to her residence just to check up on her and make sure that she's okay. Esona got to her residence and he was surprised to find that she wasn't there. And once he spoke to her friends, they told him that they were also worried about her because she hadn't been back since the day before, and it was very unlike her. Like, she wouldn't just go out and be out like for the whole night and not let anyone know where she is. Esona began panicking alongside her friends, and after discussion they thought it would be best that he go to the police station and report her missing. On Monday morning, Uyinene's mom and dad were getting ready to board their flight, and this is when her mom received a message, and it was a missing persons flyer for Uyinene. And this is when it kind of clicked for her that her daughter was really missing, and she couldn't believe it. And as soon as they boarded the flight, for the whole duration of that trip, she couldn't stop crying, and she just wanted to know where her daughter was. And as soon as the plane landed, they went straight to Uyinene's residence, and not too long after that, the police also arrived. Uyinene's friends and family began posting on social media that she was missing and where she was last seen and what she was wearing, and soon her posters were circulating all over the country, and the hashtag Bring Nene Home began trending. They also began distributing her flyers all over Cape Town, posting them on lampposts, and whilst they were doing this, they discovered that on Saturday she had went to the post office in Claremont, and this is where she was last seen. They also went to that very same post office and just asked the people working there to hand out some of the flyers. In the early hours of that same Monday, the 24th of August, police officers were patrolling in Khayelitsha as they usually did, and this is when they came across a body. This body was then identified as that of 19-year-old Uyinene Mrwetyana, and immediately her friends and family just couldn't believe the news, because yes, she was missing, but they had always thought that she would come home alive no matter what state she was in or what circumstances she had found herself in. They always believed that she would come home alive, just walking through the door, but instead she came home in a coffin. The investigation into Uyinene's murder moved very fast. 4 days after her body had been found, police investigators informed the family that the Claremont Post Office, where she was last seen, was the crime scene, and a post office worker had confessed to her murder and that he would appear in court that Monday for a pre-trial. The post office worker's name was Uyinene Mrwetyana, and he was 42 years old at the time. He also had a criminal conviction for robbery from 1999. As Uyinene was last seen at the post office, police officers went there just to go ask them a couple of questions, and Uyinene was acting a bit weird, and they also discovered some blood in the post office as well as on his shoes that were identified as that of Uyinene's. At the pre-trial, family and friends heard what happened to Uyinene, but the full extent of what she had went through would only be discovered 2 months later when the trial began in November. On the 7th of September 2019, Uyinene Mrwetyana was laid to rest at Abbotsford Christian Centre in East London. The centre was filled to capacity with friends, family, politicians, and just so many people that wanted to pay their respects to both her and her family. At her funeral, her mother said, "I'm sorry that I warned you about all other places, but not the post office. I am sorry I was not there to protect you and fight for you, my girl. I promise to take the baton and continue to fight the gender-based violence." Her brother said, "One thing I will hold on to is that to your last breath you were fighting, and I am sorry that I wasn't there for you. I am so proud of you. Your fight is now our fight. Lala noxolo, baby girl." News about Uyinene's murder caused there to be protests all over South Africa, especially in universities, with women and men protesting against gender-based violence. In 2022, South Africa was named one of the most dangerous countries for you to be a woman, and here women and children get killed every single day. Uyinene's story sparked another outcry because she had walked into a post office and she hadn't come out alive. And in a country where you're not safe in your home, on the streets, in schools, you know, one place where you expect for you to be safe was the post office, and then even there you're not safe. And this made everyone angry and upset and just demanding that the government be more like strict with their rules, you know, for men to stop killing us women. 3 months after Uyinene's death, in November 2019, the trial finally began. The trial was also not the first time that Uyinene's mother had seen Uyinene. She said that once they got to Cape Town and they had discovered that the post office was where she was last seen, her and her husband went there. And once they got to the front, she told them that she's not there for their services. And she introduced herself as Uyinene's mother, and she just wanted to speak to the last person that had seen her and just find out what happened to her daughter. After this, the manager took her and her husband to the back and they sat down with Uyinene, and you know, she just asked him a couple of questions, you know, like what time the store opened on Saturday, what time it closed, what time Uyinene got there, what time she left, what time their offices closed, and once she left the post office, which direction did she go in. And she said as she sat there speaking to this man, she didn't feel anything like odd or suspicious about him. She trusted him, and as she remembered like how much she trusted him, she knew that that was the same trust Uyinene had for him, just looking at him in the eyes, you know. And she'd never forget that day. She can't explain that feeling that she had. During the trial, the court finally heard the full story about what happened to Uyinene that fateful day. On Saturday the 24th of August, Uyinene had went to the post office to collect a parcel, and this parcel just had some clothes that she had ordered online. This wasn't the first time that she had went to the post office. She had went earlier that month on the 8th of August, and when she got to the post office, Luyanda told her that her parcel hadn't arrived and that he would call her to let her know when she can come collect it. Her parcel arrived 8 days later on the 16th, and he even scanned it and like filed it in that the parcel had arrived, but he hadn't called her yet to come collect the parcel. Then on the 24th of August, Uyinene went to the post office to collect her parcel. Some sources say that once she got there, Luyanda was behind the counter and there was load shedding at the time. So she wanted to use her card to pay for the parcel, but they couldn't because of load shedding. So the card machines didn't have network, or like they weren't charged, something like that. And because like load shedding is such a usual thing in SA, you know, if you go somewhere and they're like, oh, sorry, we have load shedding, you don't think much of it, you know, like you don't question it. So then she left and then she returned later that afternoon. But in Luyanda's confession, he doesn't mention this part. He says that he got to the post office that Saturday for his shift, and on Saturdays the post office would close at 1 p.m. So on that specific day, one of his other workers left the post office just before 1, and they had agreed that Luyanda would be the one to lock up. So after he was the only one left at the post office and he had closed the post office for that day, he called Uyinene to let her know that her parcel was ready for collection. Uyinene then got a Taxify and went to the post office, and once she got there, Luyanda opened the door for her, and after this he immediately locked the door. And as she was like rummaging through her bag just to get her mode of payment to pay him for the parcel, he started making sexual advances towards her, but she kind of just ignored him and just wanted to pay and get out of there. He then pulled her closer towards him, and he said that she looked really scared. Just like as she looked at him, she was terrified. Luyanda then sexually assaulted her, and throughout this assault she kept fighting. At one point she managed to get out of his grasp and ran towards the door, but unfortunately he caught up with her and knocked her to the ground. He then dragged her to the safe that was in the post office and locked her inside there, but this is when she began screaming, and then he opened it and began choking her. Next to him there was a brick that weighed about 2 kilograms, and it was usually used to weigh down some of the parcels, and he then picked up this brick and bludgeoned her to death. After this, Luyanda left the post office and he went nearby and just began drinking, and not too long after that he returned to the post office and covered her body with cushions, a blanket and a jersey as she lay in the safe, and then he just left and went home. In the early hours of Sunday, Luyanda returned to the post office and he began cleaning up all the blood. He then waited for it to get dark, and then he went to the security guard that was patrolling the post office and I think a couple of shops that were next to it, and he asked the security guard if he would be able to park his car in the yard of the post office, and the security guard said sure thing. And after this, Luyanda took his car, parked it really close to the entrance of the post office. He then wrapped up Uyinene's body in a parcel like package that they had, and then placed the body in his car, and then he drove to Khayelitsha, and after this he dropped her body in like a random area and dug up like a shallow grave. He then went to the garage and bought some petrol. He returned to her body, doused it in petrol and set her alight, and then he went home, which was relatively close to where her body was found. It is believed that from the first time Luyanda saw Uyinene, he pre-planned her murder and knew that he wasn't going to let her go because she would have seen his face, known where he worked, and he would have sexually assaulted her. And because of that, he couldn't let her go, or just couldn't let her live, because she would easily be able to identify him and he would easily be like convicted or found guilty of such a crime. It is also believed that it's not the first time that he has done something like this, or maybe something not as gruesome as this, because perpetrators like Luyanda always start off somewhere. So maybe he has made unwanted sexual advances, he has sexually assaulted someone before, and maybe those cases just hadn't made it to like the police station, or they had enough evidence to convict him or something like that, which is why he was still roaming the streets. And it is believed that had he not been caught as quickly as he had, he would have went on to murder more people and would have potentially become a serial killer. On the 15th of November 2019, Luyanda Botha was found guilty for the murder and rape of Uyinene Mrwetyana and sentenced to 3 terms of life imprisonment, as well as an additional 5 years for defeating the ends of justice, without a chance of parole for 25 years. In 2019, the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Cape Town, Professor Mamokgethi Pakeng, announced the establishment of the Uyinene Mrwetyana Scholarship for Women in Humanities Studies. The Uyinene Foundation was established shortly after her passing, and its main aim is to empower young people to stand against violence, and their mandate is to promote their lifelong vision of fighting all forms of injustice against women. If you're in East London on the 27th of August of this year, the Uyinene Foundation is hosting a gender-based violence awareness walk from 9 to 12. So if that's something you're interested in attending, I will put the sign-up link in the description box. Esona, Uyinene's brother, says that there can never be justice for losing someone in such a manner because it shouldn't have happened in the first place. And that's it for today's case. If you guys have any comments, please don't forget to leave them down below. Please like, subscribe, and all that jazz, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.